I'm Brenda Taylor and I'm a clinical psychologist, ADHD educator, and I love talking about adult ADHD. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some things I wish my clients knew before they got a diagnosis. Some things that I would like people to know are lots of people who are diagnosed, I'm talking about late diagnosed adults, were misdiagnosed with anxiety, depression, or borderline personality disorder first. And so I have struggled for years to figure out what's going on, why isn't my antidepressant working, or why have I tried therapy and nothing's moving along for me. And often it's because they were misdiagnosed with one of these things first and it just wasn't considered. And it might be because of, age or generation, or it might just be you saw a person who isn't really in tune with ADHD or those sorts of things. So understanding perhaps what happened in the past, didn't work, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue an ADHD diagnosis if that's what you think you have, because that might be the answer. So another thing I wish people knew was that sometimes people attribute things to an ADHD that actually aren't ADHD, and they just overlap with normal human experience. So I think especially at the beginning when people get their first diagnosis and they start researching it and getting maybe hyperfixated on it and trying to understand what's going on, I do see people comparing things. Oh, this is an ADHD thing and that's an ADHD thing. And yeah, I think, it's good to, own it and be proud of it if it helps you understand it. But, not everything, that you think is ADHD is, because it just overlaps with, just being human. So there is a continuum, obviously, and to meet the criteria for ADHD, you have to be able to meet the criteria and to be, all the diagnostic criteria. Helps you to label things as ADHD, that's great. But if it works to, to make you think that, oh, well, I can't get around that because I have ADHD, that is not useful to you at all, and it won't help you get to where you want to be. So it's having the label and understanding. It might be a reason why things might feel difficult, or it might help explain that, or, or what's going on in your life. But don't let it stop you from thinking, oh, well, I can't do this job, for example, because I have ADHD, or, I can never be on time because I have ADHD. I mean, you're allowed to believe that, but it's actually not going to help you, get through and do the things that you probably need to do or want to do. It's not going to help you create great relationships with people. And yes, it's definitely harder, and I am not undermining that in any circumstance, but I also see that the people, I see a variety of people with ADHD, and I see a variety of ways people cope. And I have noticed a trend that people who tend to, not stop themselves from doing things because they have ADHD, meet their goals, do a lot better, have a lot more self-compassion, and I would say probably seem happier. So I think that's important to note. So another thing I've noticed is that a lot of ADHDers most likely received a lot of more criticism as a child than the average person. And then, like, why can't you do this? Or why can't you be like Bobby? I don't know. And then you then take that message still as an adult and have internalized it and still continue to feel, not good enough. Or another thing I wish people knew was that, regulation and understanding emotions is something you can learn and you can develop. It might not have been your experience growing up, and you might find it a lot harder to regulate because that's definitely part of ADHD. But it is something that you can work on. It can be a skill that you could develop in therapy or through understanding, online programs, for example, or just by journaling, noticing, practicing, but it is something you can develop. And obviously things like medication definitely help regulation. because they work on executive functioning and slowing down and being less impulsive. But, you know, there's also things you can do as well that will help that. Okay, so another thing I wish people with ADHD knew was that if you have a child with ADHD, there is a good chance that either you or your partner have it too, because there's such a high percentage of genetic transmission, I guess I'll say, that, you know, it is quite frequent to see that. And so obviously that can affect, you know, the way you parent. So understanding yourself is going to be really helpful in that journey of parenting. And it's going to help you understand your needs as well as your child's needs, so that you're maybe not butting heads as much, or maybe getting the treatment that you need too. Another thing I wish people knew who have adult ADHD is that I've noticed that often adults feel a lot of shame that they need to write things down. And I guess I want them to know it's okay. I mean, you know, keeping everything in your head is really hard. You know, when you're an adult and you've got a lot of things, a lot of responsibility, job, work, children, career, looking after house, looking after parents, looking after, you know, all the aspects of your life, looking after yourself and your body, it's really easy to forget stuff. So I think I hear a common theme sometimes that people think, oh, but I shouldn't have to write it down. And they seem to equate that with failure somehow. But, you know, I'm neurotypical. I write things down, otherwise I'm going to forget. It's okay to write things down. It's okay to not just rely on your memory. It is not a fault, but realistically, for people with ADHD, forgetting things, you know, because it does affect working memory, is really common. So it's like learning not to fight against yourself and just doing what you need to do and just accepting that. That's okay. That's what's going to help. So another thing I wish people knew with ADHD is there's no perfect job for an ADHDer. ADHDers do lots of jobs. I mean, I've met people from all walks of life, all levels of education, and it really, you know, it's more than just because I have ADHD, this job suits me. There's so many other factors that go with that. So, you know, there isn't a perfect job, but I guess it's trying to figure out what's the right job for you, what matches your interests, what can you do, what level of energy have you got, what are you interested in? Because obviously with ADHD, it's very interest-based. And if you're trying to maybe force yourself into doing something that you don't want to do, that could feel hard. But at the same time, you know, that might be the case for lots of people in life. So trying to think of the perfect job is probably not that helpful. You need to really be looking at other criteria as well. Another thing I wish people with ADHD knew was that they can be really great at making plans. Sometimes, you know, planning ahead and looking at all the steps for some ADHDs is really easy. The difficulty can be prioritizing, it can be in executing the steps and then having the motivation. But the planning stuff can be excellent, you know, thinking of all the problems and all the things that can go wrong. So that is a good skill, but that in itself won't get you to where you want to be. It's also the execution and the action and getting through the plan. So it's also writing realistic plans that you can do, that are broken down, that are step by step. That is also what's really going to help. Okay, so that concludes my list of things I wish my clients knew who have ADHD or who are getting a diagnosis. So if you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, share, comment and tell me what else you'd like to hear about, and perhaps sign up for my newsletter. Okay, thank you everyone.